coming from a different world and only being a politician for a short period of time. How am I doing? Am I doing okay? I'm president. Hey, I'm president. Can you believe it, right?
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Yes. Even if we think we are free from the disease, I believe most of us know someone who seems a little religious, or maybe outright crazy when it comes to Donald Trump. There is no shortfall of public figures and neighbors who have become different people, or at the very least revealed themselves as having different principles than they projected. Watching it all unfold makes one feel that Trump Derangement Syndrome is spreading like a contagion.
Lucky Strike. First again with Tobacco Men. First again with...
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Thank you for joining me for this public service announcement. It appears though the contagion has stopped spreading by the objective numbers. The data shows that Trump is gaining favorability while the unfavorability strengthens, but is not increasing. The resistance is losing the popularity battle. Essentially, those whom has spread to have increased in more dramatic symptoms but have greatly reduced communicability in the advanced stages of disorder. There is no evidence to think the threat is over. Like all other natural disasters, there is often no time to think, only to react. The compromised integrity of the media can set off a wave of irrational attacks at any point of the clickbait propaganda process. Have an emergency kit on hand and keep stocked with the necessary supplies. During outbreaks, the infected are immune to the usual countermeasures of debate, reasoned arguments, critical thinking, self-reflection, empathy, and other civilized approaches. Because of this, you are advised to develop a plan for what you and your family will do before disaster strikes. Though the infected and those who are carriers have increased symptoms when exposed to these, walls, fences, and voting have been very effective so far as protection and precautionary measures. Stay informed during severe outbreaks in any way you can. It can be the difference between survival and losing your possessions, life, or career. Thank you.
Services here? Nope.
The only reason that is slightly funny is because of the truth behind it. Those who are allowed on media, mainstream, and social are a vocal minority and are very far away from the reality of the country. They are the extremes in both their loudness and minorityness. I haven't seen what people are saying about Trump Derangement Syndrome until recently. I just kept running into it. So, what did others say? Oh, and I will put in some kind of break or music or something to distinguish clearly between my reading the article and my personal commentary.
He was going to ask a very simple, easy question. And it's not. It's not a simple question, not a fair question. Okay, sit down. I understand the rest of your question. So here's the story, folks.
Now, I did not do an in-depth research project, but one of the earliest thought-out statements on it was found in the Los Angeles Times in an op-ed titled, Do You Suffer from Trump Derangement Syndrome? By Justin Raimondo on December 27th, 2016, which goes like this. The country is in the throes of a major epidemic, with no known cure and some pretty scary symptoms. It's called Trump Derangement Syndrome, or TDS, and it's rapidly spreading from the point of origin, the political class, to the population at large. In the first stage of the disease, victims lose all sense of proportion. President-elect's every tweet provokes a firestorm, as if 140 characters were all it took to change the world. Trump set up a single phone call with Taiwan's president, and suddenly TDS patients were insisting that our One China policy was no more. But the reality is that telephonic communication isn't the same thing as official diplomatic recognition. Besides, in their eagerness to highlight Trump's alleged recklessness, the president-elect's critics misunderstand our policy. One China means that we don't recognize Taiwan as a sovereign country or China's sovereignty over Taiwan. We've never considered Taiwan a mere province, and the Taiwan Relations Act obligates us to defend the island against attack. The mid-level stages of TDS have a profound effect on the victim's vocabulary. Sufferers speak a distinctive language consisting solely of hyperbole. Politico recently ran a piece that noted Trump's supposedly unprecedented decision to continue using his private security force, which provoked former independent presidential candidate Evan McMullin to tweet, quote, "A predictive move for a kleptocratic authoritarian who wants to operate outside the bounds of law, basic ethical standards. Even more troubling, he may use the force's lack of government oversight and presidential veneer to carry out extra-legal acts of force." It's quite a stretch to suggest that a desire to keep trusted lieutenants is actually a sinister plot to create a version of the brown shirts. But such illogical leaps are the pathway to the next stages of TDS, a state of constant hysteria. Especially when discussing Trump's views on immigration. Hysterical TDS victims assume there's no difference between the president-elect's rhetoric, "get out," and his proposed policy, deporting known criminals who are in the country illegally. As Reince Priebus, Trump's chief of staff, put it, he's not calling for mass deportation. He said, "No, only people who have committed crimes. And then only until all of that is taken care of will we look at what we are going to do next." As TDS progresses, the afflicted lose the ability to distinguish fantasy from reality. Despite Trump's expressed desire to work something out for the so-called dreamers, those brought here as very young children, Trump's critics continue to harp on the issue. Immigration advocate Frank Sherry, executive director of America's Voice, who has a very bad case of TDS, inadvertently revealed this mindset when he said, quote, "Before anyone falls into the trap of believing that Trump is softening on immigration, they should remember that we've seen this movie before." Unquote. Movie, eh? In the advanced stages of the disease, the afflicted lose touch with reality. Opinion is unmoored from fact. Life resembles a dark fairy tale, which the villain, Trump, is in a amalgam of all the worst tyrants in history, past and present, while the heroes, Trump's critics, are akin to the resistant fighters of World War II. TDS victims routinely compare Trump to Hitler. Time magazine ran an opinion piece that asked, "Just how similar is Donald Trump to Hitler?" The answer? The comparison between Hitler and Trump is so poignant because both men represent their personal character as the antidote to all social and political problems. Since Hitler has been dead for more than 70 years, though, victims may feel the need for a more potent boogeyman, a tyrant with more currency. And they found one in Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom they insist ordered a hijacking campaign to help Trump win the election. The other day, Tucker Carlson of Fox News interviewed TDS riddled Representative Adam Schiff in Burbank. Carlson asked for evidence that Putin's alleged machinations had any effect on the election. Unable to come up with a coherent answer, Schiff morphed into J. Edgar Hoover. Quote, "You're carrying water for the Kremlin," he said. "You're going to have to move your show to Russia today." If you ask a TDS victim what might help them feel better, they use the word normalize, as in, we mustn't normalize Trump. What they're really saying is that normal means of dealing with him aren't enough, which raises the question, if he's another Hitler, if he's in league with Putin, then why is assassination out of the question? Poke a TDS victim and you'll find out they don't think that solution is out of the question at all. This is the final stage of the TDS epidemic. Violence against a democratically elected leader. Unless a cure for TDS is found, this is where we are headed. Okay. That was a bit funny, but not funny. That was quite a while ago. I mean, December 2016. So 19 months ago. Impressive to be able to communicate that observation back then. I definitely wonder what the mentioned 140 character limit of tweets has changed influence after being expanded, and it also came off a bit hypercritically hyperbolic when the author Justin Raimondo states that TDS, quote, sufferers speak a distinctive language consisting solely of hyperbole, unquote. Well, I mean, thing is, I have encountered it. For some of it, for some, it is hyperbolic itself. For others, it's quite spot on. It is also crazy that these specific issues persist and evolve. Immigration in Russia and Hitler comparisons with Nazi talk on the daily. And once again, we are not a democracy. We are a republic. Trump was legally voted in, but not democratically. We do not have democratic elections. As the piece wraps up, it mentions violence, and yeah, the objective measurement of violence has been from TDS sufferers and carriers, and strangely enough, this has been seen more in media, which signals an attempt to use that for the goals of the elite. So, I don't know, something is fishy there. Alright, so now let's see the tone of about a year later. Here is an article or a piece called Stage 4 of Trump Derangement Syndrome, Identifying the Progress of a Disease by Thomas Lifson in American Thinker, December 28th, 2017. Like AIDS 3 decades ago, Trump Derangement Syndrome is a new ailment whose first course of development is as yet, whose full course, start that over. Like AIDS 3 decades ago, Trump Derangement Syndrome is a new ailment whose full course of development is as yet unknown. But after a year since TDS exploded on the scene, early November 2016, we can observe the progress of the disease through 4 stages in certain acute sufferers. This offers hope that we may start to predict how the affliction may spread, or alternatively, extinguish itself, should the rate of transmission to others be slowed by factors we may be able to identify. Progressives love to adopt what they call a public health perspective on things they oppose, such as possessions of a firearm. This results in pediatricians asking parents if they have a gun in their house, among other oddities. Two can play that game. It is time to face the mass psychosis that has swept the at-risk population of the nation since the election of Donald Trump as president. It is pretty clear that the first stages of TDS include 1. Denial. Attributing Trump's electoral victory to Russian hacking is the most common manifestation, but another common manifestation is the syndrome is electoral college denial. Quote, Hillary won a majority of votes, so she should be president. 2. Anger at Trump supporters. Disparagement of Trump's voters as unworthy fools whose misguided thoughts brought us a disaster. This is matched by anger at Trump supporters among political commentators. 3. Shunning of former colleagues with the bad taste to support Trump. In fairness, this is a two-way street, as Kurt Schleider quips. As 2017 comes to a close, tumbleweeds roll down the empty Lido deck while the Republican base answers the question. What if Conservative Incorporated gave a cruise and nobody came? Four, conversion. As the first three factors combine, and if no countervailing thoughts are allowed entry into the TDS sufferer's brain, for reasons we do not yet understand, we get signs of actual ideological conversion. Once the virus of liberalism reaches the brain, progress can be devastating. A tweet. The GOP tax bill is bringing out my inner socialist. The sex scandals are bringing out my inner feminist. Donald Trump and Rory Moore are bringing out my inner liberal. What is happening? From Bill Kristol, November 21, 2017. And this from Max Boot, who suddenly discovered white privilege because of Donald Trump. No kidding. This is his writing in Foreign Policy. Quote, it has become impossible for me to deny the reality of discrimination, harassment, even violence that people of color and women continue to experience in modern-day America from a power structure that remains, for the most part, in the hands of straight white males. People like me, in other words. Whether I realize it or not, I have benefited from my skin color and my gender, and those of a different gender or sexuality or skin color have suffered because of it. This sounds obvious, but it wasn't clear to me until recently. I have had my consciousness raised. Seriously. The larger problem of racism in our society was made evident in Donald Trump's election. Unquote. Is there any recovery possible when TDS reaches this late stage? Does it permanently disable perception and logic? My hopeful prognosis is that remission is possible. Jonah Goldberg, for example, despite early disdain for Trump and membership in the National Review editorial staff, has retained his ability to make distinctions and even find praiseworthy actions by President Trump on occasion. This coming year, with the likelihood of prosperity fired by deregulation and tax reform, will be a test. I expect those never Trumps who have not developed an immune reaction in the cerebral cortex will recover. But those unable to get beyond their own failure to understand Trump's electoral victory and subsequent triumphs will lapse farther into their illusions. Eventually, they will come to admire Rosie O'Donnell, who ought to be the marker for the terminal stage.
Since you're attacking us, can you give us a question?
No,
Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking our news organization, can you give us a chance?
Your organization
You are
is
attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give us a
is
chance
terrible.
to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet.
you state,
Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you state
She's asking
categorically,
a question.
Mr.
Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not
Go ahead.
appropriate.
Again, these writers were seeing something which I was not. But I will throw out my criticisms anyway. And the author is making comparisons to the hypocrisy of the left and progressive. I advise caution, because it ruins your ability to reach out of your bubble. A tit-for-tat game of whataboutisms can go on endlessly between the left and the right. Both ideologies are wildly hypocritical, dogmatic, authoritarian, and religious. Interestingly, he also mentions the Russia BS. How it has evolved and is used as an argumentative tool, and also appears to get that America is not a democracy distinction. I have seen the anger that he mentions, and maybe anger is the wrong emotion. It could be frustration, anxiety, fear. I don't know, but a lot of it. The response that looks like anger is very real, but I do not get his comment on the shunning of colleagues and both ways in a cruise, but whatever, I just don't know that cultural reference. But colleagues are shunned, and most of this goes both ways. Not sure what these arguments, I'm not even sure what of the arguments does not apply to. I mean, broadly speaking, left and right, in at least some version, have the hypocrisy on their side, and I've seen them both be easily triggered and be offensive to normal human behavior, not even normal, typical decorum, civility. I guess those are trigger words or something. But anyway, in the section of the piece about conversion, the author essentially suggests that what the data is reflecting an entrenchment of ideas and increasing this to commitment, though decreasing in numbers. It's the same thing. So he was kind of accurate about that. And to be further critical, when Thomas Lifson states, quote, "Those unable to get beyond their own failure to understand Trump's electoral victory and subsequent triumphs will lapse further into their illusions," unquote. He should mean delusions, not illusions. What we all observe is an illusion. Finally, though, I get the point of the Rosie O'Donnell quip, but we must get past this othering and personal attacks. The winners of the culture wars are nearly always the ones who take the high road, the greater moral philosophy. All in all, it's quite interesting what was being said. I was behind the 8 ball on this one. Hopefully some meaningful discussion and comments can follow. Hopefully some meaningful discussion and comments can follow. Hopefully. But let's leave you with guidance inspired by Michelle Obama's Hurricane Sandy public service announcement. Hi, this is Dr. C. Square with an important information from FEMA. The 2016 presidential election was a devastating event that affected communities throughout the United States and beyond. If you live in one of these communities and you experience damage to your pride, personal identity, that one which you built on a bed of lies, family relations, feelings of normal, then you may be eligible to apply for federal TDS assistance. This disaster assistance can cover a wide range of damages to both major and minor losses. So I urge you to apply today by calling 1-800-743-4448 or 1-800 or by visiting tdsassistance.gov from your computer or mobile phone. And for the hearing and speech impaired, well, you should feel grateful right now. Please don't hesitate to ask for whatever help you need. Please know that we will continue to come together as one American family to support our fellow citizens as we rebuild our communities. Thank
you. Muslim is not a religion, partner. It's an ideology. You don't come and talk about America when you're supporting Muslims.
Ever since then, I've been like, fuck that.
This has been produced by Teddy Bear Chola Productions for iMemberMedia.com.
Teddy Bear Chola.